Hummus, also known as msabbaha on my side of the world, is not only a thick chickpea smoothie, but also a childhood relic for me. I worshipped this masterpiece as a child. I loved it so much, I tried to fit it in every meal of my day. Okay, well, not literally every single meal of my day, but you know what I mean. Come on. A few years go by, and as I got older, my obsession with hummus started to cool down. Fast forward to 2020, and I finally get my student visa to study psychology in Germany. I was about 20 years old, and about 5 months into my stay, I got the craving for some hummus. So naturally, I did my best to seek out some hummus, but didn't really find anything authentic, and was forced to try this, or this, and this. And whilst I did eat something, I did not eat hummus. That wasn't hummus. And after that traumatizing experience, I pretty much forgot about it and tried to press it down into my psyche. Up until now, as I've recently developed a habit of cooking. I've also developed a habit of filming myself cooking. I've also developed a habit of filming myself cooking. So I decided to make the best hummus recipe. One that's way better than store-bought. And luckily for me, there's a plethora of just that. But I settled on this one because it had Arabic in it. So for this recipe, you're going to need 500 gram hummus, 90 gram tahine, 27 gram zayt zaytoon. You will also need carbonium bicarbonate of soda, around a teaspoon, not that much, some garlic, 2 lemons, some ice, and also some salt. For this recipe, you will also need a food processor or blender for breaking purposes. You want to start off by dumping all your chickpeas into a strainer and then washing them off. I might have put in a bit too much chickpeas and my strainer was biting off more than it could chew. Afterwards, you want to take out your big bowl and then dump your washed chickpeas in it, and then you want to drown those chickpeas with water. Some more water and some more water. Stare at your chickpeas weirdly for a bit, and then you want to add 1.5 teaspoons of didonium or whatever it's called. I don't know, I'm not a chemist. Give that all a good stir. Nice little mix. Look at that little guy swimming. I think he's having the time of his life. Afterwards, you want to wrap it up. Safety first, and then you want your chickpeas to rest overnight. Make sure they're wrapped tightly and make sure that they're comfortable. Tuck them in good night and then walk away. After about 8 to 24 hours, you want to wake up your chickpeas gently, and if that doesn't work, you want to wake them up violently. And your chickpeas should look something like this. Mine soaked up a good chunk of the water, which made me realize that I should have used much more water. Afterwards, you want to drain them, add them into a pot, and then fill it up again. In the original recipe, she used a pressure cooker. I didn't have a pressure cooker, so I decided to just skip that step, as I saw that in other videos, they also just used a normal pot instead, and I figured that could work. You want to set it on a high heat first for about 10 minutes, let that water come to a boil, and then you want to let it simmer for maybe 50 to 70 minutes. Mine, however, started forming a bubble monster about 2 minutes in, which gave me flashbacks to my first video. And in one of the recipes that I watched, the guy just scooped out the foam and put it into a little bowl. I think he actually scooped it out for a different recipe, and at the time I thought that he scooped it out to get rid of it. Curiosity also got the best of me, and I decided to try it, and it tasted pretty good.
What the fuck?
Every time some foam was forming on top of it, I scooped that foam out, making sure to cover the pot once more so more bubble monsters can form. After about 3 minutes, the foam monster just kept getting bigger and bigger, and I kind of felt like I was wasting my time, but I still stuck to the original plan and scooped out any excess foam constantly, and I repeated this process 3 to 4 times. Also, I feel the need to say, as the chickpeas were cooking, my apartment smelled like one big fart. After letting the chicken cook for about 4 to 5 minutes on one side, you want to flip the... Wait, that's not the recipe we're doing. After multiple times of removing the foam, I decided that it would just be best to take off the lid and let the chickpeas boil just without it. 1 hour has passed, and my chickpeas have pretty much finished boiling. The first thing you want to do is you want to set some aside for garnish. You can also use paprika as garnish, and you can also use cumin. Yes, we are doing garnish in this video. I have to pay my respect. Now, in the main recipe that I'm following, they put all the chickpeas into a food processor after they've cooled down. I don't really have a food processor, but I did have a blender, and I figured how different could it be? They're both just blades that spin. After letting it rip for about 5 minutes, my blender has done absolutely nothing. I think the hummus was even more intact than before it went into the blender. In fact, my blender sounded like it was begging for mercy. Absolutely befuddled by my blender not blending the chickpeas, I decided to reduce the amount and then give it another shot. Clearly it didn't work. I remembered that my mom had gotten this hand mixer for me. She brought it with her from Syria, so it wasn't really the strongest hand mixer, but it might have been able to do the job. I was pretty hopeful. It kind of did the job. It was mushing the chickpeas, but it wasn't really turning them into a puree. It just looked like I was spawning in some couscous instead, and they were not turning into the consistency that I wanted them to be. After blending for about 2 to 3 minutes, I was hit with the smell of wires burning, and my hand mixer was literally scalding hot. So I decided to Google a bit, and I had a few options here. One of them was putting the chickpeas back in some hot water and letting them boil for another hour maybe, which I wasn't gonna do. I chose the easier option, which is filling up my blender with some hot water and then using that to blend in some of the chickpeas. And once they turn into a puree, I just add in the rest of the chickpeas, and hopefully it's all flowers and roses, right? To my surprise, the hot water method worked a bit. I was turning my chickpea into a chickpea smoothie, albeit not at the right consistency. Once my initial chickpeas turned to a nice smoothie, I decided to add in the rest of the chickpeas and give it another try. It didn't work. I kept trying to turn it off and turn it back on, and then maybe trying different speeds to see if it would pick up at some point, but it just never did. So I decided perhaps to scrape down the sides first and see if I could push down the chickpeas to the bottom. Maybe they could get blended in by the blades instead, and all will be well. Which also did not work, and also my blender was making the saddest noise ever. I can only interpret it as it begging for mercy. And it wasn't even turning on anymore. Whenever I turned it on, it just turned off immediately. As a final Hail Mary, I decided to just add in the rest of the ingredients, because I mean, we made it this far anyway, and also slightly out of frustration, and not just slight frustration, heavy frustration. So first of all, I added the 90 grams of tahini, 27 grams of olive oil, the juices, of 2 lemons. You also want to add in some garlic. I added about 2 cloves, but you can add in as much as you want. And some ice cubes. I added about 4. I also decided to push down the ingredients that I added. Make sure you forget to add any salt to taste, and then you want to start blending again. Which, to my surprise, did absolutely nothing. The bottom was turning into a nice puree, but at some point it would stop blending. And at about this point, my blender would just not turn on anymore. It would turn on for a few seconds and then stop. I also touched the sides. It was scalding hot. So you'd think that about this point, any sane person would give up, right? Anyways, this is a hand mixer, and it is also a sin. Absolutely horrible thing that I am doing. I'm using a hand mixer for hummus. I don't know how we got here. I don't know what sins I've committed. I don't know if I have to pay any reparations to Arab people for this one, but I apologize. I just really wanted to make hummus. That's all that I wanted out of this recipe. I was hoping that the hand mixer would just work out the rest of the kinks and mix in the tahini, the olive oil, the whatever, and maybe perhaps I would have hummus at the end of the day. But what just ended up happening is the ingredients just did not mix. Most of them just remained to the side, and as much as I tried mixing the hummus and the tahini and the everything, they would just not form a cohesive what do you even call it? Cohesive hummus. I kept on mixing for about 5 minutes and decided it's now or never. I went in for a taste and it tasted like baby food. I made baby food. I went in for another taste to make sure that I did not get tricked, and I did in fact not make hummus. It just tasted like a big spoonful of nothing. Maybe that's because I forgot to add salt. Probably because I forgot to add salt. Definitely because I forgot to add salt. The consistency was also not there. It was not creamy. It was not like the recipe promised me. And at about this point, I decided to just give up, give it a rest. And yeah, here's my big bowl of throw up. The Syrian embassy actually caught wind of this and gave me a ring the other day. They said that they wanted the Syrian citizenship back. I apologize to all of my fellow Arabs who are watching this. If I had to rate this recipe anything, I would probably rate it a "Are you being for real right now?" out of 10, because it is the only thing I could think of whilst making this recipe. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'm going to the gym. The aftermath of my kitchen. Trying to make hummus. What a fucking mess. I took out every single blender. Took out this blender. Still have some here. Used this one. And I used this one too. It just didn't blend. Somebody didn't want me to make hummus.